So, week 12, the introduction says the conflict of Matthew 21 through 23, what we've kind of been looking at the last few weeks, Jesus and his interaction with the religious leaders of the Jews, leads to Jesus pronouncing woes upon the religious leaders. Then in Matthew 24, Jesus announces a coming judgment against the temple and various trials that will characterize the age until his return. This leads to a series of parables that Jesus delivers to encourage his people to be prepared for his return. The big picture in the Olivet Discourse, what this section is called in Matthew 24 and 25, Jesus announces judgment against Jerusalem, teaches about coming trials, and motivates his followers to prepare for his glorious return. So we are, as I said, going to begin by looking at Matthew 24 tonight. And so if you have verses 1 through 5, you can go ahead and start, and we're going to read all the way through chapter 24. And just as we read, I just really encourage you, things that stand out to you, comments, questions that come to your mind. There's a lot in this chapter. And so, things that are on your mind, things that you'd like for us to talk about, make sure you bring those things up. Let's go ahead and read that. Matthew 24, starting in verse 1.
Jesus left the temple and was going away, when his disciples came to point out to him the buildings of the temple. But he answered them, "You see all these, do you not? Truly I say to you, there will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down." Signs of the end of the age. As he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, "Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" And Jesus answered them, "See that no one leads you astray. For many will come in my name, saying, 'I am the Christ,' and they will lead many astray."
You will hear of wars and rumors of wars, but see it that you are not alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All of these are the beginning of birth pains. Then you will be handed over to be prosecuted and put to death, and you will be hated by all nations because of me. At that time, many will turn away from the faith and will betray and hate each other. And many false prophets will appear and deceive many people. Because of the increase of wickedness, the love of most will grow cold. But he who stands firm to the end will be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come.
Therefore, when you see the abomination of the desolation which was spoken of through Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let him who is on the housetop not go down to get the things out that are in his house. And let him who is in the field not turn back to get his cloak. But woe to those who are with child, and to those who nurse babes in those days. But pray that your flight may not be in the winter or on a Sabbath, for then there will be a great tribulation, such as has not occurred since the beginning of the world until now, nor ever shall. And unless those days had been cut short, no life would have been saved, but for the sake of the elect, those days shall be cut short.
For false Christs and false prophets will appear, and they will provide great signs and wonders, so as to deceive, if possible, even the elect, God's chosen ones. Listen carefully, I have told you in advance. So if they say to you, "Look, he is in the wilderness," do not go out there, or "Look, he is in the inner rooms of a house," do not believe it. For just as the lightning comes from the east and flashes as far as the west, so will be the coming in glory of the Son of Man. Everyone will see him clearly. Wherever the corpse is, there the vultures will flock together.
Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not provide its light, and the stars will fall from the sky, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. And at that time the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn. And they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send his angels with a loud trumpet, and they will gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other. Now learn these lessons from the fig tree. As soon as its young shoots become tender and it puts out its leaves, you know that summer is near. So you too, when you see all these things, know for certain that he is near, right at the door. I assure you and will solemnly say to you, this generation, when these signs and events begin, will not pass away until all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away.
But no one knows the date and hour when the end will be, not even the angels, no, nor even God's Son, only the Father knows. The world will be at ease, banquets and parties and weddings, just as it was in Noah's time before the sudden coming of the flood. People wouldn't believe what was going to happen until the flood actually arrived and took them all away. So shall my coming be.
Then 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken and one left. 2 women will be grinding at the mill, one will be taken and one left. Therefore stay awake, for you do not know on what day your Lord is coming. But I know this, that if the master of the house had known in what part of the night the thief was coming, he would have stayed awake and would not have let his house be broken into. Therefore you also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect.
Who then is the faithful and wise servant whom the master has set over his household to give them their food at the proper time? Blessed is the servant whom his master will find so doing when he comes. Truly I say to you, he will set him over all his possessions. But if that wicked servant says to himself, my master is delayed, and begins to beat his fellow servants and eats and drinks with drunkards, the master of the servant will come on a day when he does not expect him, and at an hour he does not know, and will cut him in pieces and put him with the hypocrites. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth.
All right, thank you very much. As we just read that, and give you a chance, there anything that stuck out to you, anything you'd want to comment on, or anything that you especially have a question on? It's the lesson. Oh, I didn't see
I
that.
do, something. Anybody need one?
Any initial reaction to reading that here tonight?
Well, if you take it literally, you better never fall asleep.
Yeah, stay awake.
Yeah.
Stay awake. Now that's said pretty strongly.
Well, this is talking about the tribulation,
Mhm.
right? And one thought I had though was verse 34, it says, I assure you and most solemnly say to you, this generation,
Mm-hmm.
people living when these signs and events will begin, will not pass away until all these things takes place. So it seems kind of this generation.
How do we understand this generation? And that's a huge question that is debated. Is, what do we do with that verse, and how do we understand it? So are there things that you have heard to try to answer that question?
I have, but I can't remember.
I just think of it as whatever generation is alive at that time, it's that generation.
Okay, and so that's one of the ways that it's understood, is to say, this generation will not pass away until these things take place. So it's when these things start,
Yeah, that
you know,
generation.
than that generation.
Oh, I see.
You know,
Well,
the challenge with that is Jesus is saying this to people that he's actually talking to.
Mhm.
You know, and he says, you know, the verse before, so also when you see these things, know that he is near at the very gates. And then it's these things taking place. So it's the people he's talking to that most logically or easily are being referred to as that generation is not going to pass away. But that is one of the ways that it's explained.
Well, because when you read the Bible and he says you, I think me
Yeah.
and you and
And we should do that,
yeah.
but we have to hear, you know, what he's saying in the context that he's saying it. And, you know, how would they have understood it?
So what did they end up thinking about that then? Because
Well,
nothing
they did think it
Yes.
was them.
Yeah, I
They
mean,
did think
you know,
it
all
was
through the
them.
New Testament, Paul, Peter,
Yeah.
you know, they all talked about it's
Yeah.
going to happen. We're, you know, any moment now.
Didn't some
That's how they understood
Yeah.
it.
sell everything and
Well-
go stand on a mountain
I
and
don't
wait?
know if they
Oh,
did that.
okay.
That's happened repeatedly over
Yeah.
history, though.
Yeah.
Yes, because people thought this is it. So
Isn't that kind of why the disciples kind of hung around Jerusalem?
to start with, that was the idea. Yeah, that you know, this is
Sorry,
it. This,
here.
yeah, 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 yeah. So, anybody, can you think of a way that this has been applied in our lifetimes? When you see these things happening, know that this generation will not pass away until Christ comes back.
Well, all these things have kind of happened somewhat, you know, earthquakes and floods
Yeah,
and those
yeah.
kinds of things
yeah.
have happened,
Yeah.
but of course they talk about the trumpet here. We
Well,
haven't heard
That's
the
when
trumpet.
Jesus comes back. That's
Yeah.
it. It's happening then. So what happened in 1948 that this often gets connected to? Yes. Yes. And so that was, you know, a huge thing when that happened and people were going, okay, you know, how does this relate to biblical prophecy? And this verse was what people grabbed onto to say, when you see these things happening, the Jewish state exists again. People are coming back to Jerusalem and Israel, you know, this is it. So this generation is not going to pass away until Jesus comes back. And so you had 1948. Well, what's a generation?
10 years.
that's the question.
Yeah, yeah.
What's
All
a
kinds
generation? What is
All kinds of ideas about what
Jesus spoke in a
generation
lot
is.
different language than these
Yeah,
do. Lots
yeah.
of times. I mean, and his generation was probably a long time, whereas for us, you know, a generation is so many years.
Most people, what they latched on to was 40 years.
Oh,
You know, that's kind of, you know, a baby's born and gets to adulthood and becomes an adult and starts having kids and has a family of their own. You know, that's about a 40-year time period till they become that next generation. And so lots of people were looking at, you know, 1988 is the year. It can't go beyond that
Yeah.
because this is what Jesus said.
Yeah.
And you know, it didn't happen then.
No, I think
States.
yeah, exactly.
Yes,
there
yes.
were a few predictions based on that.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Oh, the end
There
of the
were.
world was going to come.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
You know, some started out saying 20 years.
Oh.
You know, from the time a baby's born until they become an adult, that's a new generation. They can start having kids then.
So
So
give 10 years.
you know, but there's, you know, 60, 70 are also numbers that get thrown around. So where are we at?
We go right back to we do not know.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So 1948 didn't work as the date to start from,
Wow.
is basically the point.
Well,
I have a theory.
yeah.
Christ was crucified when he was in his 30s.
Yeah.
So would it make sense that if God works in whole numbers, it could be around 20, 30,
You know,
or,
those kind of ideas are up there.
I mean,
Yeah. But just, this is one of the things in this chapter that is really challenging to know exactly how should this be understood. And there's all kinds of ideas. And,
Well,
You know,
We don't know.
From Adam to when this happens, in God's eyes, could be a generation.
a moment.
Yeah.
oh,
So,
well,
yeah, and that's part of it is God's timing is different than ours.
Yeah.
like you said, he'll come as a thief in the night.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
well, it's just like today, they were testing the alarm system.
Oh,
And because there's a problem with it. And so I'm sitting there, the thing goes off. I'm thinking, boy, that's probably just the way Jesus is going to come too.
Yeah.
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 I mean, I wasn't expecting it.
Right.
Yeah.
I knew it,
Yes.
but I wasn't
At
expecting
that
it.
moment, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else that just kind of stuck out to you or a question that was raised just as we read this to begin with?
Well, I kind of have a question based on our conversation. So right now, the world is totally crazy.
It is.
Weather is crazy.
Yes.
So if we would look at those things as, so which generation would be considered the generation that will not pass away? Will it be us? Will it be our grandkids? Or is it our great grandkids? I mean,
We don't
Yeah.
know. We don't know. And that's part of the challenge. And obviously the, Jesus statement here, nobody knows, not even the Son, is intended for us to recognize. We don't know. We are supposed to pay attention to the signs and be aware and be ready. So we are supposed to be thinking about that and watching and aware, but we have to go back to, we do not know. What timing will it be? We can't say this is it, and we have to be careful of that.
Yeah.
I think every generation has thoughts they're
Yes.
probably living on.
I think
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. So,
We're closer than they were. I think.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
the people back
Yeah.
in Jesus' time,
Yeah.
I'm sure they were really disappointed
Mhm.
that he didn't
Yeah.
come back when they thought he was gonna.
yes.
But it's just part of the waiting.
Yeah.
and 2,000 years to God is like the blink of the eye.
Right.
So
So I'm not going to second guess God. I think I just will try to stay ready.
That's
Stay
the
awake,
call.
Don.
Yeah, go away.
Yeah.
And that's the things that I think we need to concentrate on is what we do to be
Yes.
ready.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
And that is the call for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
live each day like it's your last. 'Cause
Yeah.
it would be.
Yep. For sure. Well, let's look
more
at
optimistic would be live like it's your first.
the first day of eternity.
It's a little more
Understand.
upbeat.
Let's look at some of the questions here. So we've read Matthew 24, 1 through 3. Where is Jesus sitting and what is he looking at? So you look at those first few verses. Where is he sitting? What is he looking at?
The Mount of Olives,
Yeah.
it's looking at the buildings of the temple.
So, and remember, these previous chapters we've talked about what's going on is Jesus is interacting with the religious leaders and it's in the temple. That's where that's been happening. So now coming to the end of the day, Jesus and his disciples are leaving, going out of the temple area, down to the brook Kidron, leaving Jerusalem, and then go up the Mount of Olives. And they pause there, the top of the Mount of Olives, look back, and have this conversation. And Jesus teaching there. So that's the setting. After he predicts the destruction of the temple in verse 2, what question do his disciples ask him? So what is their question immediately?
When will this happen?
Mhm.
When will this happen?
And what will be the sign of your coming
What will be the sign?
at the end of the age?
Yes. And so just to recognize the disciples, first of all, they look back at the temple, looking down from the Mount of Olives. To them, this is just an awe-inspiring, amazing, wonderful, great thing. That's basically what they do. Just, hey, Jesus, look at that temple. Just look at that. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that wonderful? And Jesus says to them, by the way,
Not one stone will be left
Yeah.
on top of the
yeah,
other.
this is all going to be destroyed. And so the disciples' reaction is when is this going to happen?
They probably went, what?
Yeah, probably.
Repeat
But,
that?
yeah. But just to recognize in their mind, if that temple is going to be destroyed like that, that is the end of the age.
Mm.
That's the end of the world. If that happens, that has to be the end of everything. That was what was in their mind. When will this happen, the temple being destroyed? And what are the signs? When is the end of the age? And they put those two things together.
So that generation didn't pass away before that came true.
Yes, and that's part of, the answer to that question. Many people look at that verse, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place, and say what Jesus was referring to was the temple being destroyed in 70 AD. So within 40 years of Jesus' words, what he said was going to happen did happen.
And that would have been their generation back then
Yes.
too.
Yes. So that's how a lot of people look at that statement, and that, okay, it happened just like Jesus said. The challenge of that understanding is he says a lot more stuff.
Yeah.
I really transitioned.
Yes.
No.
And so that's what Jesus does, is Jesus separates those two things. The disciples' mind, if the temple's destroyed, that's the end. Jesus says the temple's going to be destroyed, but here's what the end is going to involve. And so he puts those two things in two separate categories. So their question suggests the disciples are confused. They think that the destruction of the temple must coincide with the end of the age. How does Jesus in Matthew 24, 3 through 51 clear up the confusion? More specifically, note a few key details about what will happen when the temple is being destroyed and when Jesus returns. So as you look through that chapter, what are the key details that you see that will happen when the temple is being destroyed? What was that immediate historical event, and what statements from Jesus are tied to that? And then what are the things that Jesus lists, key details when Jesus returns? So what do you see? What would you say are the key details that go with either of those two things?
Well, I think he's saying that there are going to be many who are going to come and tell you that they're the one, and you're going to don't let them deceive you. So he's giving you a heads up that be a lot of
Yeah.
false.
Yes. And so Jesus does, a couple of times really emphasizes that point. There's going to be false Christs, false prophets who are going to try to deceive you. You got to watch out, be aware, don't get deceived. So that's one of the things for sure.
Lawlessness will increase.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wars and rumors of wars.
Yeah. So, he has a kind of a long section
Yeah,
there in verses 3 through 14 about things that are going to happen
Not just
in that
beginning.
whole time period between Jesus' first coming and second coming. This is going to characterize what life is like in our world. Wars, rumors of wars, earthquakes, famines. This is stuff that's going to happen. Just be aware that that's the way it's going to be.
And now we have Mount St. Helens
Mhm.
and
Lots.
Yellowstone and all of them
Greenland
rumbling
or
again.
Iceland, there was an,
Yes,
yeah.
and Iceland too, yeah, it's like,
Oh,
yeah.
there's lots of stuff going
Yeah.
on in our world, that's for sure. Yeah. Any other key details that you would tie either to the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem or to when Jesus returns?
This is the one that I kind of think about when it in verse 14 where it says the gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in the whole world for a witness to all the nations, and then the end will come. And how many, I mean, I feel like it was Andrew
And Wilson.
Olson that said how many nations there still were that haven't heard the gospel.
I mean,
Or,
they break it down into languages.
Yeah.
people do.
yeah, it's hard, there are some that have not heard yet.
You know, it's debated those numbers because almost all of those language groups have other languages
That they
that they
understand,
can hear the
right.
Bible in. And so what did Jesus mean here? How detailed was he going to get? But, you know, it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
So there must be others that are waiting to hear. Yeah.
Well, and it sounds like he's really giving us a heads up on the fact that because there's going to be so much lawlessness, that people aren't going to be caring about one another like they should, and so he's saying we need to pull up our bootstraps and hang on to our faith and
And many will lose their
Yes.
faith.
yeah.
Some pretty grim warnings there. Is there anything in this chapter that you look at and you say, that is really talking about the destruction of Jerusalem and the destruction of the temple? You know, that was really specific to what happened there in 70 AD.
Well, that's when the Roman army under
Mhm.
Titus came in and
Yep.
destroyed the temple and
Yep.
everything.
Wiped out the nation, completely destroyed the temple. Is there anything in this chapter that you look at and say, well, that really fit that event? That's what Jesus was referring to there.
The wars and the rising up of nations.
Yes, that was certainly going on.
When he said there wouldn't be one stone upon another.
Yes, yeah, and that's the clear prediction. This is going to happen, and this is what it's going to look like. What about verses 15 and 16 and 17 and 18 and 19?
I thought that's
Scary.
My thought was that it was like the first few verses was really talking about the temple, and then the rest of the chapter was talking about the future. But
So just to recognize that section starting in verse 15, all of that happened very clearly and directly in connection with the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem in 70 AD.
Really?
Yes. When in connection with around the time of the Romans coming in, there was a takeover of the temple, sacrifices of pigs on the altar, setting up idols in the temple, all of that happened. And so that abomination of desolation, that was going on at the time. And we believe that we have good Christian tradition that says the Christians who remained in Jerusalem, who were there at that time, recognized what was going on, understood Jesus had given them a warning, and they did. Those who were in Judea flee to the mountains. And that's what the Christians did. They saw these things happening. They saw the Roman army coming, and they realized this is what Jesus was talking about. And they just picked up and left and got out of there.
Nero part of that?
This was after Nero.
Oh, it was after.
Right after, but
So
Because there he took Christians.
right. But that was in Rome.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
here,
Okay,
you know,
this
this
is
is in
Jerusalem.
Jerusalem. Yeah.
So is this one of those prophecies where there was this fulfillment, but there will be a future fulfillment?
It really seems like, you know, that's I don't know what the word is, easy, helpful way to understand it, because a lot of those things we look ahead and say that kind of thing is going to go on just before Jesus comes too.
Mhm.
But we know that it did happen
I didn't know that.
at the time the Romans came. Yes. So, you know, one of the things is if you look, for example, at Luke 21, verse 20, you know, when Luke records this passage, but uses a little different language. Luke 24,
Luke
no, not
24,
24, Luke
21.
21. Yeah, verse 20. And so, you know, Luke says, but when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then know its desolation has come near. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let those who are inside the city depart, and let not those who are in the country enter it. And so, you know, Luke puts it in terms where it's like, okay, we're not speculating about, is this really the abomination of desolation or not? It's when you see the Roman armies coming, you get out of there. And that's what the Christians did.
Huh, I
There
always
weren't a
thought,
lot of Christians left in Jerusalem at the time, but there were.
I always thought this was future too.
Well, and you know, that can apply to the future too. But, you know, like I say, just to recognize some of these things were literally clearly fulfilled in 70
I
AD.
have that written in 7. I didn't have that in Matthew.
Oh, yeah, because the Luke one
Yeah.
is where it's really clear. So there's a few things that we can point to say, you know, we know that happened in 70 AD. Are there things in this where you look at and say, that is talking about when Jesus comes again? Didn't happen in 70 AD. This is only going to happen at Jesus' second coming. Are there details, key details that you look at and
Well, the
say
days
that's
haven't been shortened yet, have they? I mean, when it talks about the days being shortened or what?
we don't know, because it's you know, if this kind of tribulation goes on for very long, every Christian would be dead. And so God's going to make it so it doesn't go that long. Well, if Jesus comes back tomorrow, then we are living in those short days.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Well, history is kind of there right now with the way things are rounding up around Israel. You know, it's like, I guess we could look at that as kind of being like the Romans coming and
We look at things in the Middle East and wonder, and there are things that you go, oh boy, this kind of sounds like that. But is there anything here that's like, this is only talking about when Jesus comes back?
When people start to disappear.
Yeah. Yeah. One will be taken, one will be left. You know, that's only happening when
Yeah.
Jesus comes back. You know, I think about the description starting in verse 29. You know, is it time? Is Jesus coming back? Well, when Jesus comes, we're going to know this is it.
We'll hear the trumpet.
Yeah.
And every eye will see him.
The sun will be darkened, the moon won't give its light, the stars will fall from heaven, the powers of heaven will be shaken. Then will appear in heaven the sign of the Son of Man, Then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. You know, nobody's going to wonder,
That's true.
was that Jesus coming or not? You know, when Jesus comes, it will be clear. We'll know. This is it.
I was heard or something, but about Jesus coming. Everybody's going to see Jesus come, and you know, it wasn't until recent years that the television was invented. You know, I mean, like, how could everybody see Jesus coming? You know, and then it's like, well, now I can. And back there, it was like, how in the world is that going to happen?
Yeah.
I think
I
God
think
could
he-
do it.
I would
Yeah.
go too.
I mean, not everybody has a TV either.
Think about, you know, now we know it, you know, it could, you know, everybody's looking at their phone.
They're watching their phone, they're gonna miss the real.
Which is what happens a lot of
Yeah.
times.
You watch your phone.
Oh.
and
They're
you miss
busy
something.
taking the video and they're not really seeing the
When I
real.
lived in Minneapolis, the Minnehaha Falls was a great attraction. I
Mhm.
used to go down there with my dogs and just people watch. And everybody was taking a selfie. Nobody
Yeah.
was looking at anything.
Yeah.
They're taking pictures of themselves.
Oh.
But you know, what you're referring to, you know, in verse 27, whereas lightning comes from the east and shines as far as the west. So will be the coming Son of Man. Everybody is going to see it and will know. And so that's one of the things that we need to remember is when Jesus comes, there won't be any question.
Well, the lightning just might knock out the TVs too.
Yes, yes.
That'd be a good thing.
Yeah.
That'd be the beginning of the good thing.
Yeah. So look at the end of that question. It says, list the commands Jesus gives. What commands apply only to Christians in the first century? What commands apply today? So as you look through this passage, what are the commands that Jesus gives? What are some that you see?
Well, you don't go back in the house.
Yeah, yeah,
Pray.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Be
Pray,
ready and prepared.
Be on the alert.
be on the alert, watch. Those are commands that Jesus gives. Yeah. Any others that you see that stick out to you?
They really don't believe
No.
false prophet.
Yes, yeah, and that's in the form of a command. Watch out for those false prophets.
Well, be awake.
Yeah,
to
be awake.
But I think what he means there is that you need to have your faith
Mhm.
and realize that Jesus Christ is your Savior
Yeah,
and so forth. Not just that you're physically awake,
Right.
right.
you know.
Yeah, this is talking about being awake spiritually
Yeah,
in our relationship with God.
yeah.
Yep, that is alive and we're awake, alert, watching. And that is definitely a command.
And he kind of stresses that faithful thing too, when he says
Yes.
not to be fearful,
Mhm.
because when you hear about all the wars and all that stuff.
Yeah.
He's saying, hang on to the faith.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid that.
Yeah.
And he told them to flee to the.
Mhm. Yeah. Don't be alarmed.
What about the people that there's been this speculation that, hey, we'll have a nuclear war,
Yeah, that's
And-
one of the things that's been talked about.
wipe out
Mhm.
most everything.
Mhm. Yeah.
But personally, you're gonna have nuclear war. I want a direct hit.
Yeah, me too.
You gonna what?
A direct hit.
Oh,
yes.
I wouldn't want to be any survivor.
No.
Well, that kind of leads us into that last question we're going to talk about tonight. In Matthew 24:36 through 25:46, through the 5 parables, Jesus instructs the church to prepare for his parousia, his return. That's the Greek
Never
word.
heard that.
Each parable uniquely fills out the theme of preparedness for Jesus' return. What is the point of the first parable, verses 42 through 44 that we read? What does stay awake mean? So we talked about that. Stay awake spiritually is what we're talking about. But let's look at these other passages The question is, how do these verses fill out our understanding of how we are to live in light of Christ's second coming? So first of all, 1 Thessalonians 5, verses 1 through 8. 1 Thessalonians 5, 1 through 8. And again, question is, how does this fill out our picture of what it means to live in light of Christ's second coming? Now, concerning the times and the seasons, brothers, you have no need to have anything written to you, for you yourself are fully aware that the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night. While people are saying there's peace and security, then sudden destruction will come upon them as labor pains come upon a pregnant woman, and they will not escape. But you are not in darkness, brothers, for that day to surprise you like a thief. For you are all children of light, children of the day. We are not of the night or of the darkness. So then, let us not sleep as others do, but let us keep awake and be sober. For those who sleep, sleep at night. Those who get drunk are drunk at night. But since we belong to the day, let us be sober, having put on the breastplate of faith and love, and for a helmet, the hope of salvation. So what are the things that stand out to you from that passage? What does this add to our understanding of what it means to live in light of Christ's second coming?
We have to keep the faith.
Yes. Yeah, very clearly, very definitely.
Yeah.
Yep. Hold on to that.
Not get caught up in our daily, everyday, normal living.
Right.
Our lists.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, in our normal everyday living, God should be included.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Well, he says we should encourage and comfort one another,
Mhm.
build one another up. So he's kind of saying we need to
Yeah.
band together and
Yeah. Yeah. And the breastplate of faith and love, the hope of salvation, those things being central in our lives. I think that comes through. I was, this passage is kind of challenging because it's going to come like a thief in the night. When people are not expecting it, when they're unprepared. But then he says, but you are not in darkness, for that day to surprise you like a thief. And so it's going to be like a thief, but it shouldn't take you like a thief. So how do we put that together? How do you respond to that? I think there's some tension there.
Well, if you're a believer, you're looking forward to this time and anticipating it and waiting for it to come. If you're an unbeliever, you're
Yeah.
Right.
oblivious.
Yeah.
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 And so I think that's what I think of, I guess, when I think of coming as a thief. They're just, this is gonna blindside and they're just
Yeah.
not gonna know it's.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a big part of that message and how he puts it here. I just, what your illustration earlier, Don, about the alarm being tested.
Yeah.
You knew that was going to happen,
Yeah.
but you didn't know the exact time. You didn't know exactly when. And so when it happened, it kind of
Yeah.
startled you a little bit, but you knew it was coming.
Yeah.
You were ready for it. You didn't panic. Oh no, the alarm's going off. I better get out of the building.
Yeah.
Because you knew what was going on. And I think that's, part of this idea is we don't know when Jesus is going to come back. It's going to take us by surprise. That moment,
A good surprise.
Yeah.
right.
For us, it's a good
Yeah,
surprise.
we don't, we aren't blindsided by it because we know it's coming and we're watching for it and preparing for it. So both of those things are true. We don't know it's going to be a surprise, and yet we're waiting for it and looking for it.
big sigh of relief and say, finally.
Yeah.
Finally, you have.
Yes. Yeah. 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 And that's the difference between the two groups for sure. So then 1 Peter 4, verse 7. Peter writes, the end of all things is at hand, therefore be self-controlled and sober-minded for the sake of your prayers. What does that add to our understanding of what it means to live in light of Jesus' second coming?
Let's say be prepared.
Yeah, yeah,
Don't get lazy.
yeah.
Don't let things slide.
Mm-hmm.
And I think praying, we're supposed to be
Yeah.
praying.
Yeah. Yeah. Does anybody have different translation of that? The ESV has, therefore be self-controlled.
Mine says, therefore be sound-minded
Okay.
and self-controlled.
Okay.
Mine says sound judgment,
Okay.
sober.
Huh.
And it says therefore be earnest. thoughtful,
Oh, earnest. Okay. Huh. Yeah.
Staying focused on the things of God so that your communication will be clear,
Uh-huh.
reasonable, specific, and pleasing to Him.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good way to put it. And then the last passage that refers to here, 2 Peter 3, 10 through 13. 2 Peter 3, starting in verse 10. But the day of the Lord will come like a thief. Then the heavens will pass away with a roar, and the heavenly bodies will be burned up and dissolved in the earth, and the works that are done on it will be exposed. Since all these things are thus to be dissolved, what sort of people ought you to be in lives of holiness and godliness, waiting for and hastening the coming of the day of God, because of which the heavens will be set on fire and dissolved, and the heavenly bodies will melt as they burn. But according to his promise, we are waiting for a new heaven and new earth in which righteousness dwells. So what does that passage add to our picture, our understanding, living in the light of Jesus' second coming?
Well, that's why we shouldn't get too attached to earthly things, is because it's all going to be destroyed.
Yeah. Everything in this physical world is just temporary. So that, what's important, what really matters, we need to take that into account.
So why am I packing so many things?
Trust me, kind of look forward to that day. It's all burned up. Oh, I know.
It's
Worried
challenging.
that the rapture comes before you move.
Yeah, that would
There
be
you
great.
go.
Go along with that.
Well, we have to remember too, we're just passing through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
The verse in Ephesians says that we are citizens of heaven right now. It's like, we're there,
Yeah.
we're here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's our permanent citizenship, where our residency is. Yeah.
I think when you're talking about the intense heat and burned up, that's where people get the idea that
Yes.
the nuclear war.
Some of this description was what, when, the nuclear bombs were created, it was like, oh, hey, that's,
yeah.
that's what it's talking about here. But, we have to recognize, that along with talking about burned up, dissolved, all of those things, he ends up talking about the new heaven and new earth. All of this then recreated and reformed into that new heaven and new earth. And so there's going to, when Jesus comes, his second coming, it's going to end this universe as we know it, but there will be a new heaven and a new earth. Really heaven for us, and that's what we're looking forward to. Yeah.
Can I ask you a question? In verse 28 in Matthew 24, it says, and wherever the carcass is, there the vultures will gather. What's your take on that?
It's an interesting verse in that context. How does that fit? Because it's, the talking about Jesus' second coming.
Mhm.
And, when Jesus comes again, that's the end. And, so what are these vultures gathering around the corpses? But I think, and I don't know, not having looked at that specifically. I think one of the things that gets brought in there is looking at some of the predictions in the book of Revelation and the wars, the battles that are fought. And there it talks about at the end of one of those battles, yes.
Okay.
And so that I think gets brought in here. But I think, yeah, I think there's a more of a symbolic or spiritual aspect to this verse too. Be careful, talking about like the false prophets and the deception and that kind of thing. As the people fall away, as spiritual hearts grow cold, the vultures are going to gather spiritually around people who are on the edge or questioning their faith or wanting to give up. And so be careful of that too.
Where it talks about, one will be
Mm-hmm.
left, the other one will be taken.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard so many different interpretations of what's happening too.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, some think when some will be taken, they're being raptured out or whatever, and some left behind. Others think that they're being taken off to be killed.
Mm-hmm.
Or,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you got any insights on that?
To me, the emphasis there is really on when Jesus comes back, you don't have a second chance. There's going to be this separation that happens between those who are in Christ and those who aren't. And it's going to be in a moment, the twinkling of an eye is what Paul says in 1 Corinthians. And so at that moment, when that separation happens between believers and unbelievers, that's the end. There's no second chance. One's taken, the other's left, and you can't change your position after that. To me, that's the message that we should get from that, is we need to be ready. We need to be in Christ. Don't put it off and say, someday I'll get this taken care of. Because when it happens, that's it. One is taken, the other's left. So.
Do you remember the song?
We should pull it up and play it.
Should,
Is there lyrics to it?
yeah.
He should sing it.
So can you remember the name?
It's Will You Be Ready When Jesus Comes?
Say, will you be ready when Jesus comes?
Are you truly born again, washed in Jesus' blood? I can't remember the next line, but then it goes, two shall be together, grinding at the mill. Two shall be together, sleeping sound and still. One shall be taken, the other left behind. Will you be ready when Jesus comes? I think that didn't rhyme, so I got something wrong there.
Yeah, that definitely comes to mind.
We'd sing that in Sunday school. Out of those little yellow. Oh, book. Number, I think it was the number one book. Yellow and black.
Let's face it, we're all sinners saved by grace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of what we gotta hang on to.
Are they white as snow? Will you, or?
It's under name that him.
Oh, that's so funny.
But I couldn't get it to go to the words then. It says the server's unavailable.
Yeah, I just got that one.
Yeah.
Oh, they don't want us to see that.
The end is coming.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. Yeah, say, will you be ready when Jesus comes? Are you truly born again, washed in Jesus' blood? Are your garments spotless? Are they white as snow? Will you be ready when Jesus comes? Two shall be together, grinding at the mill. Two shall be together, sleeping common still. One shall be taken and the other left behind. Will you be ready when Jesus
Oh,
comes?
I guess I did get it.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Let's close in prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you that we can be ready because of what Jesus did. That he came the first time to die, to save us from our sins, so that we can be clean, washed in Jesus' blood. Lord, I do pray that you would help us to recognize how you call us to get that message to other people, that gospel will be proclaimed throughout the world so people can hear and know and be ready too. Lord, help us to stay awake, to be watching, to be ready. Thank you for your word. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you very much. And next week we will finish up with chapter 25 and the parables talking about Jesus' second coming.
Mhm.
We'll see you, Rod.
Yeah, thank you.